All right, let's talk about one of the most chilling and honestly bizarre chapters in American history, the Salem Witch Trials. We're going to step back in time and figure out what on earth was going on. Okay, I want you to picture this. You're standing in a small village. It looks simple enough, right? But just under the surface, something is deeply wrong. The air here is just thick with suspicion and a really intense, hardcore religious belief. Because in this town, every single thing you do is being watched. Every word is being analyzed, and if you're different, the punishment is death. So the question isn't just about what happened back then. It's about whether you could have made it out alive. To even start to understand how this all happened, you've got to understand the people and the place. And that means getting inside the Puritan mindset, which basically controlled every single part of life in Salem. And look, this wasn't just a casual Sunday morning kind of belief. For the Puritans, the devil wasn't some spooky metaphor. No, he was a literal, real enemy, walking around, trying to mess things up. They genuinely believed they were fighting an invisible war, 24/7. So anything that went wrong, anything they couldn't explain, it had to be the devil's work. The church's power was absolute. It told you how to dress, how to talk, everything. If you were feeling down, you had to confess it, because unhappiness was a sign that Satan was getting to you. You couldn't even whistle, and a simple hello was a no-go. You had to say good morrow. One tiny slip-up, and boom, you're an outsider, and that's a dangerous thing to be. So you've got this pressure cooker of a town, just simmering with fear and suspicion. All it takes is one little spark to set the whole thing off. And in the winter of 1692, that spark came from two kids in the local minister's house. And we're not talking about simple temper tantrums. These girls were screaming, twisting their bodies into impossible shapes, acting in ways that terrified everyone who saw them. The town minister, Samuel Parris, who was Betty's dad, was, as you can imagine, totally desperate for an answer. After a month of prayers and trying every home remedy they could think of, they called in the village doctor. He couldn't find any physical reason for the fits, so he landed on the one diagnosis everyone was secretly afraid of, but also kind of expecting: witchcraft. The devil was officially in Salem. So, naturally, the first question is, how do you fight witchcraft? Well, their answer was more magic. They made something called a witch cake. Yes, you heard me. You take rye flour, mix it with the urine from the sick girls, bake it, and then you feed it to a dog. The theory was that the dog, after eating this very special cake, would magically reveal who the witch was. I am not making this up. Shockingly, the witch cake didn't work. In fact, it made things way worse. More young girls in the village started showing the exact same symptoms, and under intense pressure to name who was tormenting them, the girls pointed their fingers at three women who were already social outcasts: a beggar, a woman who didn't go to church much, and the Parris family's slave, Tituba. Now, both Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne swore up and down they were innocent. But Tituba, after almost certainly being beaten and threatened by her master, Samuel Parris, confessed. She said she was a witch, but she didn't stop there. She added a little detail that was about to pour gasoline on the fire. With that one sentence, everything changed. Tituba told them there wasn't just one witch. There was a whole secret group of them, hiding right there in the village. This wasn't a hunt for three specific women anymore. This was now a full-blown panic. The witch could be your neighbor. It could be your friend. It could be anyone. And just like that, the floodgates were open. The fear of being accused was suddenly matched by the incredible power you could get by accusing someone else. All trust in the community just collapsed. Okay, let's just pause here for a second and make this personal. Imagine you're there. What's the mundane little thing about you that would get you accused? Do you have a weird birthmark? Are you maybe a little too quiet or a little too loud? Do you like to read books? In 1692 Salem, any of that was enough. What do you think your crime would be? The hysteria just snowballed. In a little over a year, more than 200 people, men, women, and even children, were formally accused of witchcraft. The youngest was only 4 years old. And the reasons for these accusations were often just completely bonkers. A former minister was executed partly because he was physically strong. A woman was hanged because after she argued with a neighbor, some of his cows got sick. But underneath all this craziness were old grudges, land disputes, family feuds. Accusing someone was a great way to get revenge. And get this, if you dared to speak out against the trials, well, that was just proof that you were a witch too. So now, let's go into the courtroom, which is where the madness really hit its peak. They set up a special court just for these cases, but it wasn't a court of law. It was a court ruled by pure chaos and superstition. The young girls were the star witnesses in pretty much every trial, and they would put on a terrifying performance. When a woman named Bridget Bishop was on trial, the girls would start screaming that her spirit, her specter, was literally pinching and biting them right there in the courtroom. And the judges accepted this spectral evidence as cold, hard fact. Bishop became the first person to be executed. The theatrics got even more intense. Martha Corey was a respected woman who had actually said she didn't believe the girls. So when she was put on trial, the accusers started mirroring her. If she bit her lip, they'd all scream that she was biting them. They claimed she was controlling them like a demonic puppet master. I mean, how are you supposed to defend yourself against that? So Martha's husband, an 81-year-old farmer named Giles Corey, watched all this happen and knew it was a total farce. He realized that if he pled either guilty or not guilty, he'd be convicted, executed, and the state would take his land, leaving his family with nothing. So he did something extraordinary. He refused to plead at all. He just stood there in silence. Well, the law had a truly brutal method for dealing with silence. It was a form of torture called peine forte et dude, which means strong and hard pain. They would lay the person on the ground, put a board on their chest, and just start piling heavy stones on top, one by one, to literally crush a plea out of them. For 3 agonizing days, they piled stones on Giles Corey, but he never broke. When the court kept demanding he enter a plea, his only response was a request for more weight. He was crushed to death, but because he never entered a plea, he died an innocent man in the eyes of the law, and his farm cast to his sons. By 1693, people finally started coming to their senses. The governor stepped in, the special court was dissolved, and the remaining prisoners were finally released. But the damage was done. 19 people had been hanged, Giles Corey had been pressed to death, and several more had died in prison. The Salem Witch Trials are this permanent, chilling reminder of how quickly a community can tear itself apart when fear and superstition take over. And it really forces us to ask a tough question. When we let paranoia guide us, when we point fingers and create scapegoats, are we just participating in a modern-day witch hunt? The names in the accusations change, but that core fear, that might just be the same.